Studio One. I am Altiti Saida Sadiq. More conversations happening just gone by as the politics where the men were at the table with Thelma to interrogate the big stories making headlines this morning. And now we're diving into time on the Minerals Commission. They are not in the studio, but we're going to the phone lines to speak to an expert from the Minerals Commission about the Minerals Income Investment Fund. And so we do know that Ghana signed the agreement with the Australian company for lithium mining or exploration, and the royalties that Ghana is going to be getting from this is 10%, which is unusual because other countries in Africa are getting less than 10%. And the CEO of the Minerals Commission, Mr. Martin Esi, has been at the table and spoken extensively of what goes into the agreement for the lithium mining in Ghana. Now, Mr. Edward Nana Koranteng is joining us on the phone to discuss what the Minerals Income Investment Fund is. Good morning, Mr. Koranteng.
Good morning. Good morning, Thelma.
This is Maltiti, but briefly tell us, what is the Minerals Income Investment Fund about?
The Minerals Income Investment Fund, I think your introduction, you indicated that I'm an expert from the Minerals Commission. I'm actually from the Minerals Income Investment Fund, the CEO of the Minerals Income Investment Fund.
Duly noted. So,
yeah, Minerals Income Investment Fund, or MIIF, is a sovereign wealth fund, what I'll call a specialty sovereign wealth fund. A minerals sovereign wealth fund that was created in line with the president's vision of ensuring that we garner more value from the mining sector. As you are aware, and I think my colleague, Mr. Isi, had alluded to it many times, that we had been mining for over 150, 200, 300 years, and there had been very little to showcase or show in terms of beneficiation for especially the communities from which these mining activities occur or go on. So the president, in his wisdom, sought to create the Minerals Income Investment Fund that will seek to use the royalties and dividends from our carried interest to reinvest into the mining sector and the entire mining value delivery system to garner value, more value for Ghanaians, and to lead to that paradigm shift towards a situation where we'll see gradually the likes of the Takwas or Boazes, etc., slowly becoming like the Perth, the Johannesburg, etc. But the most important thing was to invest to ensure that Ghana has more value in terms of equity, in terms of Ghanaian participation in the value chain, in the supply chain, etc. So in summary, this is why the fund was set up in 2019. But our activities really began end of 2020, 2021, really. In fact, our very first investment started in 2022. So even though we were set up in 2019, activity took more of a start, I should say, in 2022.
Right. We've been mining other minerals for a while before this whole, we've been mining lithium before this whole agreement came into being. How different is it going to be with the Minerals Income Investment Fund being at the forefront of this?
I think it's a complete shift from where we used to be, because now Ghana has an entity that is taking on more stake in mining companies, even on commercial basis, in negotiating on commercial terms and taking in more equity and taking in equity positions that benefit Ghana. So I'll just give you a bit of a brief in terms of the lithium. I believe Martin had indicated from the government side or showed what we were getting from the government side, even though we are a government entity as well. We worked on the negotiations together, but we looked at MIIF from the point of view of purely commercial. So for government, as you're aware, we're looking at 13% free carry interest. As you're aware, and as Martin mentioned, the law allows or prescribes a maximum 10% equity interest free carry. That means we are not paying for it. Into these major mining companies that invest in Ghana. We have negotiated 13%. The 13%, even though government and MIIF is negotiating. MIIF, as part of its functions, manage all equity interest in mining for the government of Ghana. So MIIF controls that 13% because it manages the carried interest, the free carry interest for government. Okay. So yes, there's the 13%, and then the royalties. We moved from 5%, which is the usual, is actually up to 5% for mining companies for royalties. We negotiated up to 10%. In fact, 10%, not up to 10%. So we negotiated 10% royalties for this particular investment. What should be striking, and I think something that Ghanaians must be proud of, is that the royalty scheme that we have negotiated, that's the 10%, is the highest we have in Africa, and is the second globally. We are only second to Chile. And for those who know the lithium sector very well, Chile is like the Saudi Arabia or the Kuwait of lithium. So Chile is the only country that has royalties more than 10% when it comes to lithium. Again, it's important that I mention these royalties because as part of our functions as MIIF, we manage all the royalties that are paid by every mineral in Ghana, that's by every mining company, with the exception of bauxite. They pay the royalties to MIIF. So MIIF uses the royalties and the dividend, like I mentioned earlier, to reinvest or reinject into the mining sector. Right. So again, these royalties come to MIIF. The other part, which I believe would add or garner again more value for Ghanaians, is that we negotiated for the company to be listed, Atlantic Lithium, to be listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. This allows Ghanaians, and we're working with Ghana Stock Exchange on this, and we're ensuring that it's as restrictive as it can be and shows the bias towards Ghanaian investors. So retail and Ghanaian companies or major creation of major buckets for pension funds, etc. So we even through the listing on the stock exchange, Ghanaians actually get more value from this investment.
Break it down for us. When you say, Mr. Koranteng, when you say Ghanaians get more value from this, break it down for us. In what way? Is it Ghanaian-owned companies providing certain services for Atlantic Lithium?
I think that's the second component I was coming to. But when I say it's listed on the stock exchange, and that's to the benefit of Ghanaians, it means that you have a right or an opportunity to buy into the company, which is listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. So you and I can say that, look, we have this 10,000 CDs or 20,000 CDs, whatever it is, and the company is now listed. We want a piece of the company. So by listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange, it allows us to even increase our stake in the company as Ghanaians and even through our pension funds. So if a pension fund, which maybe has about 50,000 Ghanaians or pensioners on its portfolio, seeks to invest $100 million or 20 million CDs or whatever into the company, that is cascading down to more Ghanaian equity stake in the company.
Okay. Tell us about
for the point that you mentioned in terms of the activities benefiting Ghanaian companies. As you may be aware, viewers may be aware, Ghana has a strong local content policy right now, where most of the mining is done now by Ghanaians. In the past, for most of the mining companies, be it gold, etc., the mining, or what you call contract mining, was actually done by foreign entities. And that's where the real money is, to be honest with you. They had companies like African Mining Services, etc., undertaking all these mining or contract mining activities. Now you have engineers and planners, we have MassMart, you have Jaspo, you have quite a number of Ghanaian companies that have taken over that space. And then you have 58 items, about 58 items that have to be procured by Ghanaians. And this is part of the local content law. So the whole Atlantic Lithium investment cascades down from equity in the topco, which is the holding company for which we bought 3% as MIIF, down to the project, which is Ewoya, and that's the Ghana project for which MIIF has bought 6%. down to the very micro or the supply chain component, where most of the activities are actually going to be undertaken by Ghanaians and Ghanaian companies.
Okay, tell us briefly about where this funds will be invested. Let's say reclaiming of lands, definitely when this deal goes into being. Are you looking at investing in health, education? What will come out of Atlantic Lithium and their exploits in the central region?
I'm trying to understand the question, but are you asking could you repeat it? Are you asking me where we are investing?
Yes,
the
fund, where we're investing our royalties and all the benefits we're getting from this deal.
Okay, so for us, we've been set up, and I think, as I mentioned, the objective is to get more value from the mining sector, and it's important because that sector employs more than 30% of our population. So for us, looking at Atlantic Lithium, we've invested $32.9 million into Atlantic. $27.9 million is going into the Ghana project, which is the main asset of Atlantic. And then $5 million goes into the holding company, for which we've taken 3%. So the global company, Ghana through MIIF, owns 3% of the global company. And then we bought a further 6% in the local company, with a carried interest of 13%. That makes it 19% interest in the local company. In terms of how the community benefits, apart from what I mentioned, there's a community fund that is part of the elements that we negotiated. So that community fund is going to be 1% of their gross revenue, of the company's gross revenue, that is going to be channeled into the community. That will then be looking at things like health services, schools, etc.
Right.
But MIIF on its own, as part of our investment and as part of our social contract with the people, are looking at corporate social investments that will cover health in the health, education, etc. in the mining company. In the mining community. So, for example, we're just about to initiate a scholarship scheme for women who are into mining, hail from the mining community, who intend to study postgraduate and undergraduate at the University of Mines and Technology.
Great.
So that's an example of some of the corporate or social investments that will be undertaken through the returns that we are getting from our main investments, such as Atlantic Lithium.
All right.
I hope that is
yes,
clear.
that answers my question. And we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for speaking to us, expanding all the issues that the Minerals Income Investment Fund is doing with Atlantic Lithium. We've signed a deal with in Ghana, is an Australian company looking at mining lithium. And we know that lithium is used in producing batteries and all of that. These are the green minerals that the CEO of the Minerals Commission has been speaking about. But this is the CEO of the Minerals Income Investment Fund, Nana Koranteng, and he's speaking about the 20 million Ghana projects that will be coming out of this deal. He's also speaking about how it has been listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, which has benefits for locally owned enterprises and Ghanaians, talking about how it will trickle down to education, health, and scholarships for even women and girls who are going to go to mining and technology schools and also work in that field. And that's it for the segment. There's a lot more to expect. Up next, we're going to be interrogating Dr. Bawumia's speech at the just-ended MPP primaries after he won, and also look at his impact in the upcoming 2024 general elections. My costume is by No Rush Collections. Stay with GTV Breakfast.